To understand the impact of the sentence I'm about to introduce, we first need to delve into what it means to interact with a narcissist. Narcissism, in its essence, is a psychological defense mechanism, a strategy for coping with feelings of inferiority and vulnerability. On the surface, it may seem like narcissists are simply arrogant, selfish individuals who think they're better than everyone else, but the reality is far more complex and deeply ingrained in their psychology. Narcissism isn't just an attitude or a personality trait, it's a worldview, a fundamental way of perceiving and responding to the world. At the heart of narcissism lies a fragile self-esteem, one that is constantly under threat. Unlike most people who derive their sense of self-worth from a mixture of relationships, accomplishments, and personal values, the narcissist's sense of self is tethered to external validation. They need others to see them as exceptional, superior, and worthy of admiration. They seek this validation relentlessly, whether through their social status, their accomplishments, or even their ability to manipulate how others perceive them. This constant pursuit of admiration forms the foundation of their existence. Without it, they feel invisible, worthless, and vulnerable. What's particularly dangerous about this dynamic is that narcissists are not merely trying to gain validation. They are trying to protect themselves from the deep, often unconscious fear of their own inadequacy. Narcissism, in this sense, is a kind of armor. It's a self-protective mechanism built over the years to guard against the gnawing fear that if seen as they truly are, they would be rejected or discarded. Beneath the bravado, the grandiose statements, and the calculated charm, there is often a person deeply afraid of being exposed as not special, not worthy, and worst of all, not enough. This deep fear of inadequacy isn't just psychological, it's existential. It's as though the narcissist feels that if their false self, the version of themselves they project to the world, were to shatter, so too would their sense of purpose. Their identity, which they've painstakingly constructed, would collapse in an instant. In a sense, narcissism is both a defense mechanism and a prison. It locks the narcissist in a world of constant performance, never allowing them to experience the quiet peace that comes from simply being. Now, we must also understand that narcissism isn't necessarily a result of choice. It often stems from early childhood experiences, whether it's excessive praise, neglect, or emotional trauma. In some cases, parents or caregivers may have showered the child with excessive praise to the point where their self-worth became inflated, creating an individual who cannot fathom failure or rejection. In other cases, narcissism may form as a response to neglect, where the emotional needs were either ignored or outright rejected, leaving them with an overwhelming sense of unfulfilled need. Whatever the root cause, the narcissist becomes locked in a cycle where their worth is dependent on others' admiration and approval. They cannot validate themselves internally. So when you consider the narcissist from this perspective, their need for control and admiration takes on a much deeper significance. It's not simply a desire for attention, it's a survival strategy. To a narcissist, being seen as weak, flawed, or worse, irrelevant, is akin to psychological death. The illusion of superiority is their lifeline. It's what keeps them functioning, what allows them to navigate relationships, careers, and social situations. But it's this very reliance on external validation that sets the stage for the power of language. Words, as simple as they might seem, have the potential to shift the narcissist's world in an instant. You can't underestimate the power of the right phrase, particularly when it challenges their carefully constructed identity. If you've ever interacted with a narcissist, you'll know that any hint of criticism or doubt, especially regarding their competence or integrity, is met with immediate defensiveness or worse, outright aggression. This is the point at which the sentence I'll introduce becomes so powerful, it speaks directly to the heart of their insecurity, bypassing all the surface-level bravado and striking at the core of what they most fear. You see, narcissists have an almost Pavlovian response to certain triggers. Things like being questioned, being doubted, or being exposed as less than perfect. It's a reflex that stems from their deep-seated anxiety. And when you question their trustworthiness, you're not merely doubting their actions, you're questioning their very sense of self. The core of their being is wrapped up in this need to be seen as reliable, honest, and above reproach. To suggest that they are untrustworthy, even in the most subtle way, creates a deep panic. It's an existential threat. In our society, we place a great deal of value on trust. It's the foundation of every healthy relationship, whether personal or professional. And to a narcissist, trust is something they work tirelessly to maintain, not for the sake of genuine connection, but to uphold their image and reputation. The idea that someone might doubt their trustworthiness is an affront to everything they have built. So, understanding this dynamic, we now have a powerful tool at our disposal. A simple sentence, seemingly innocuous, can cause a narcissist to panic. This sentence strikes at the heart of their insecurity, and in that moment, they are forced to confront their worst fear, the possibility that their carefully curated persona might be exposed as a lie. And this brings us to an important lesson about human nature. We are all, to some extent, vulnerable. We all have insecurities, things we fear being exposed or rejected. But the key to navigating the narcissist world is understanding that their vulnerabilities are not like ours. Their fear of being unmasked is so deep, so rooted in their psychological makeup, that it drives their every action. This knowledge can empower you, not to manipulate, but to defend yourself. It's a tool that can help you maintain your boundaries, stand your ground, and prevent the narcissist from controlling the narrative. So, as we move forward in this discussion, I want you to keep in mind that words are powerful, not just in the way they communicate ideas, but in how they can pierce through the defenses of those around us, especially those who are trapped in the prison of their own identity. Understanding the narcissist's psychology and the fragility of their self-concept gives us the leverage to navigate difficult situations, whether it's a personal relationship or a professional one. And when we realize this, we can begin to take back control over how we engage with those who seek to manipulate us. In the end, it's not just about the sentence itself. It's about recognizing the power of truth to unsettle the lies that people, especially narcissists, have built around themselves. And in that, we find a path toward greater clarity and self-empowerment. When we talk about the power of words, it's essential to understand not just how language functions, but how it shapes the very fabric of our reality. Words are more than just vehicles for communication. They are the tools through which we structure our understanding of the world, how we navigate relationships, and how we project our identities to others. The impact of words goes far beyond the simple exchange of information. They have the ability to influence, to provoke, and in some cases to break down entire psychological defenses. The power of language, when wielded effectively, can shift the emotional landscape of a conversation, challenge someone's worldview, and even change the course of relationships. In the case of the narcissist, words take on a heightened significance. As I mentioned earlier, narcissists live in a world where their sense of self-worth is externally validated. Their identity is fragile, constantly teetering between the need for admiration and the fear of being exposed as inadequate. In this context, words are not simply a means of expression. They are a battleground for the narcissist's sense of survival. They depend on words to reinforce their image of superiority, to elicit admiration, and to maintain control over their environment. But when words are used in a way that challenges their constructed identity, they can become a source of panic, shaking the very foundation on which the narcissist stands. To illustrate this, let's think about how language functions within the framework of the narcissist's psyche. When we speak to a narcissist, there's often an underlying awareness that they are constantly gauging our response, measuring how much admiration, validation, or recognition they're receiving. Every word we speak becomes part of a larger dynamic where their need for validation is at stake. In a sense, they are always reading the room, trying to decipher how much control they have over how they are perceived. This isn't just a superficial need for attention, it's a fundamental aspect of their psychological makeup. The narcissist's identity is built on this external feedback loop. However, there's a paradox at play here. While the narcissist seeks constant validation, they are also deeply averse to anything that might expose their vulnerabilities or flaws. Their entire identity is crafted around being seen as flawless, superior, and untouchable. This is why the narcissist's reactions to certain words, especially those that challenge their trustworthiness or integrity, can be so extreme. Words that would seem innocuous or inconsequential to most people can feel like an existential threat to someone whose entire sense of self is built on a facade of perfection. Think of the psychological dynamics that come into play when we question a narcissist's trustworthiness. For the average person, trust is a mutual, evolving process. It can be built over time and in many cases rebuilt if it's ever broken. But for the narcissist, trust is more like a currency, a means of securing their place at the top of the hierarchy, a necessary tool for maintaining their carefully crafted image. When trust is questioned, it's not just about a single event or misunderstanding, it's about an attack on their very identity. For them, the idea that someone might doubt their integrity is akin to saying, I see through your entire facade. It's a psychological rupture, a challenge to their position in the world. This is where the true power of language lies. Words, in this context, are not just a reflection of reality, they are the building blocks of reality itself. What we say, how we phrase things, and the tone we use can fundamentally alter the narcissist's perception of themselves. In the case of the sentence I introduced earlier, I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore. The effect isn't just about expressing doubt, it's about invoking the fear of exposure. The narcissist is faced with a reality in which their image of invulnerability is threatened. This simple phrase breaks through the armor they've worked so hard to build, highlighting a weakness they cannot afford to acknowledge. Now let's pause here and consider the broader implications of this. It's easy to see how the narcissist's reaction to certain words can feel overwhelming. But this dynamic is not unique to narcissists. All of us, to some degree, rely on language to construct and maintain our identities. We use words to define who we are, to express our values, and to shape how others perceive us. The difference between a narcissist and the rest of us, however, lies in the degree to which their self-image is dependent on external validation. The narcissist's identity is like a house of cards, delicate and easily destabilized by the wrong word, the wrong challenge. For most of us, our identity can weather such challenges with resilience. For the narcissist, such a challenge is often felt as a direct assault on their very existence. This is why, when dealing with narcissists, we must be mindful of the words we use. It's not just about choosing the right sentence to provoke panic, but about understanding the stakes of the... In interactions with a narcissist, there's often an underlying game of power being played, a struggle for dominance, for control over how the narrative unfolds. The narcissist, in many ways, will try to control the conversation, manipulate your perception of reality, and keep you in a position where they remain untouchable. But when we introduce a phrase that challenges their ability to control the narrative, especially one that questions their trustworthiness, the power dynamic shifts. Words are, of course, double-edged swords. They can be used to manipulate, to control, or to tear down. But they can also be used to expose truth, to call out dishonesty, and to reclaim power in relationships that may otherwise be dominated by the narcissist's tactics. Understanding this gives us a powerful tool in navigating interactions with narcissists or anyone who seeks to dominate through psychological manipulation. It isn't about attacking or hurting, but about asserting boundaries and forcing a shift in the narrative. This brings us back to the essential lesson of language. It's not just what we say, but how we say it and what that reveals about the power dynamics at play. By understanding how narcissists use language to control and protect their fragile self-image, we can begin to navigate these interactions with greater awareness and strategic insight. And in doing so, we gain the power to challenge their constructed realities and bring us closer to a place of honest, direct communication. In the end, the power of words lies not in their ability to manipulate or deceive, but in their capacity to reveal truth. When we choose our words carefully, when we understand their psychological weight, we wield the power to change not just conversations, but the very dynamics of our relationship. Let's take a step back and consider what happens when you say the sentence, I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore. To many, it may sound like a simple expression of doubt, but to a narcissist, it's a psychological landmine. What seems like an innocuous comment to an ordinary person is in reality an existential threat to someone whose entire identity is built on maintaining a facade of perfection and invulnerability. This sentence strikes at the heart of the narcissist's worst fear, the idea that they might be seen as flawed, untrustworthy, or perhaps even worse, irrelevant. You see, narcissists live in a world where they cannot afford to be seen as anything less than exceptional. Their sense of self-worth is inextricably tied to the image they project to others. This image, this constructed self, is what allows them to navigate their world. It's what grants them power, what fuels their need for validation, and what protects them from their deepest insecurities. Without this image, they feel exposed, vulnerable, and ultimately unworthy of love or respect. This isn't merely a preference, it's a psychological necessity. The narcissist cannot function without the external affirmation that their image is intact. To lose that image is, in a very real sense, to lose themselves. When you introduce the sentence, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," you are not merely questioning their behavior. You are challenging the very foundation of their constructed identity. Trust is the currency through which relationships, whether personal, professional, or social, are maintained. It is the bedrock of human connection. But for the narcissist, trust is not something that can be freely given and taken. It is a tool to be wielded, a means of maintaining control over the narrative. Trust for the narcissist is often transactional. They don't build trust through authentic connection or shared vulnerability. They build it by ensuring others believe in their image of superiority. It's about creating a facade of reliability, honesty, and competence, all of which exist not for the sake of genuine connection, but to secure their place in the social hierarchy. To say, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," is to challenge that facade. It's to suggest that their carefully constructed persona might not hold up under scrutiny, and that perhaps their image of infallibility is an illusion. In that moment, the narcissist's world begins to unravel. This is not just a casual remark, it's an assault on the very core of their self-concept. When their trustworthiness is called into question, they are no longer the perfect, untouchable individual they project to the world. Instead, they are revealed for what they fear most: a person capable of deception, of failure, and of vulnerability. In many ways, this sentence acts like a mirror. It forces the narcissist to confront something they cannot tolerate, the possibility that they might be seen as less than perfect. For the average person, the idea of being doubted or questioned may be uncomfortable, but it's a part of the human experience. We all have flaws, we all make mistakes, and we all experience moments of doubt. But for the narcissist, such moments are a direct threat to their carefully crafted identity. They cannot afford to be exposed. So when you utter this sentence, you are not simply doubting their actions, you are forcing them to confront their own internal contradictions. Now let's explore why this reaction occurs. At its core, the narcissist's identity is not real. It's a construct, an elaborate performance designed to shield them from the existential terror of inadequacy. This construct is fragile. It's held together by a constant stream of external validation, admiration, and reinforcement. The narcissist constantly needs to be seen as the best, the smartest, the most capable. Anything that threatens this illusion threatens their very sense of self. To a narcissist, being exposed as untrustworthy doesn't just mean a temporary loss of social standing, it means the collapse of their entire identity. In practical terms, this manifests in their reactions. The narcissist might become defensive, lashing out at you for daring to question their integrity. They might gaslight you, twisting the narrative to make you doubt your own perceptions. They might deflect or minimize the issue, shifting the blame onto you or others. But the underlying psychological mechanism remains the same: panic. The narcissist's need to maintain their perfect image overrides all other concerns. They cannot allow themselves to be seen as flawed, even if they are. In this sense, the narcissist's response is not a calculated strategy. It's a reflexive, almost primal need to protect the illusion of their own superiority. What's important to realize here is that this reaction is not just a display of arrogance or defiance. It's a symptom of a deeper psychological issue: the inability to tolerate vulnerability. Narcissists cannot sit with the discomfort of being seen as flawed or untrustworthy, because in their view, vulnerability equates to worthlessness. For them, being vulnerable is synonymous with being exposed, and being exposed is synonymous with being rejected. So when you challenge their trustworthiness, you're not just doubting their actions, you're shaking the very foundation of their self-esteem. This brings us to an important lesson. The narcissist's reaction to this sentence reveals something profound about the nature of human psychology. We all have defenses, ways of protecting our sense of self. But what sets the narcissist apart is the degree to which their sense of self is fragile and dependent on external validation. They are trapped in a cycle of performance, constantly striving to maintain an image that can never be fully realized. And the moment that image is called into question, the whole house of cards comes tumbling down. So what do we do with this knowledge? How can we use it to our advantage? First, we must understand that this sentence isn't simply a weapon, it's a tool for insight. It reveals the narcissist's deepest fears, their psychological vulnerabilities, and their desperate need to maintain control over their identity. And when we see this, we gain the power to navigate our interactions with them more effectively. We understand that their reactions are not personal. They are a reflection of their internal struggle. By recognizing this, we can avoid being manipulated, maintain our own boundaries, and move through the interaction with greater clarity and strength. Ultimately, the power of this sentence lies not just in its ability to provoke panic, but in its capacity to expose the fragile nature of the narcissist's identity. It forces them to confront a reality they would rather ignore, and in doing so, it offers us a glimpse into their deepest insecurities. And perhaps by understanding these insecurities, we can learn to navigate not only our relationships with narcissists, but with all people with greater awareness, compassion, and strength. In the end, the narcissist's panic reveals a fundamental truth about human nature. We are all in some way vulnerable. We all rely on external validation to reinforce our sense of self. The key is not to protect ourselves by building an impenetrable facade, but to learn to embrace our vulnerabilities without fear of being seen for who we truly are. And when we do that, we reclaim our power, not through manipulation or control, but through the simple, undeniable strength of authenticity. Let's now turn to the question of why this sentence, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," triggers such a dramatic response in a narcissist. To answer that, we need to dig deeper into the psychology of narcissism and understand the fragile foundations upon which their identity is built. Narcissists, as we've already discussed, rely heavily on an inflated self-image to navigate their world. This image of superiority and invulnerability is not merely a preference. It's a necessity for them to feel safe in their own skin. The moment that image is threatened, their entire psychological system begins to break down. So why does this one sentence strike at the heart of their insecurity? Let's break this down. Narcissists depend on the admiration, respect, and even fear of others to maintain their sense of self-worth. They craft elaborate personas designed to be above reproach, infallible, and untouchable. They weave stories about themselves, often embellishing their accomplishments and exaggerating their superiority in comparison to others. This persona is the armor they wear to shield themselves from the deep, often unconscious fear of being exposed as ordinary or worse, unworthy. For a narcissist, being seen as untrustworthy is akin to a deep existential threat, not just because it signals that their actions might be morally questionable, but because it undermines the very core of their identity. When you say, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," you're essentially shining a spotlight on the cracks in that persona. You're suggesting that their image of invulnerability and perfection may not be real, that they might actually be flawed, human, and capable of mistakes. This is terrifying for a narcissist because it threatens the intricate facade they've constructed to protect themselves from their own sense of inadequacy. For the narcissist, trust is a currency, and if that currency is withdrawn or questioned, it signifies a collapse in their status. It means they're no longer the admired, reliable, and exceptional individual they've carefully presented to the world, but just another person capable of betrayal and deceit. At the heart of narcissism is a desperate need for control. Narcissists have learned through their life experiences that in order to protect their fragile sense of self, they must control how others see them. They control the narrative by presenting a flawless image, one that demands respect and admiration. When trust is questioned, the narcissist loses control over that narrative, and the moment someone doubts their trustworthiness, they feel their grip on the social dynamic slipping away. They no longer have the upper hand, and that loss of control is more than they can tolerate. This is where the anxiety kicks in. Narcissists do not have the psychological resilience to handle this kind of challenge. For the average person, a comment like, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," might prompt reflection, conversation, or even an apology, depending on the circumstances. But for a narcissist, this sentence is not an opportunity for growth or self-improvement. It is a threat, a direct attack on their carefully maintained self-image. Their entire worldview is shattered in an instant, and they react with panic because they cannot tolerate being exposed as anything less than perfect. But the narcissist's panic response isn't merely defensive, it's primal. This is where the deeper psychological layers come into play. Beneath their grandiose exterior, narcissists often carry a profound fear of rejection and abandonment. They're not just afraid of losing status, they're afraid of losing their place in the social hierarchy altogether. For them, trust is not just about maintaining a good relationship with others, it's about securing their place in the social order. If they lose trust, they fear being cast aside, ignored, or even worse, replaced. The panic response is therefore rooted in a fear of social exile, the loss of their perceived value in the eyes of others. This fear of rejection is not something that can be easily overcome through logical reasoning or calm discussion. The narcissist is not concerned with the content of the accusation. They're concerned with the emotional and psychological fallout. When you question their trustworthiness, you threaten their position in the social structure. You are essentially telling them that they might not be as superior as they've worked so hard to appear. That is why they react with such intensity. The narcissist cannot engage with this threat in a rational way because it speaks to something deeper than their cognitive processes. It speaks to their very survival. Their identity is so entwined with their social standing and the validation they receive that losing it, even momentarily, is terrifying. So when a narcissist is confronted with this sentence, the response is predictable: denial, aggression, manipulation, and deflection. They will do whatever they can to avoid facing the truth of the situation. They might gaslight you, twisting the situation to make you question your perception of reality. They might turn the tables and accuse you of being untrustworthy, of betraying them, or of failing to live up to some imagined standard. These reactions are not simply about avoiding accountability, they are about self-preservation. The narcissist will do anything, including distorting the truth, to protect the fragile image they've worked so hard to cultivate. What is important to recognize here is that this behavior is not inherently malicious. Narcissists are not necessarily bad people. Their actions stem from a deep-rooted fear, one that drives their need for control and validation. They cannot bear the thought of being exposed as imperfect because it would mean the collapse of everything they've built their identity on. Their responses are survival mechanisms, attempts to protect themselves from the emotional and psychological devastation they would feel if they were to admit their flaws. This is where we can find a powerful insight into human nature. We all carry vulnerabilities, but the narcissist's vulnerability is not something they can easily confront. Where most of us can admit our weaknesses, reflect on our mistakes, and grow from them, the narcissist cannot afford to do so. Their sense of self is too fragile. For them, every challenge to their image of perfection feels like a threat of annihilation. And so they react with fear, defensiveness, and sometimes even hostility. So why is this knowledge important? What do we do with the understanding that the narcissist's panic is not simply a power play, but a deeply ingrained, almost automatic defense mechanism? First and foremost, it gives us the ability to navigate these situations with greater awareness. Understanding that the narcissist is not acting out of malice, but out of a profound need to protect their identity, allows us to engage with them more strategically. We know that they are incapable of handling the truth in a way that promotes self-growth. We also know that the more we challenge their constructed image, the more intense their reaction will be. But this insight doesn't give us license to manipulate or hurt them. Instead, it empowers us to establish boundaries and protect ourselves from their attempts to dominate the conversation. This knowledge can also guide us in our personal growth. By recognizing the narcissist's intense need for validation and control, we can better understand our own vulnerabilities. We can see how easy it is to become trapped in the need for external affirmation, and how that need can drive us to avoid confronting our own flaws. In a sense, the narcissist's panic is a reflection of a universal truth. We all carry fears of inadequacy, but only those who are unable to confront them with honesty are consumed by that fear. Ultimately, the narcissist's panic in response to questioning their trustworthiness reveals the deeper truth of human vulnerability. We all need validation, but it is in learning to reconcile our need for validation with our acceptance of imperfection that we find true strength. The narcissist, trapped in their cycle of performance, is unable to make this reconciliation, but when we see their panic for what it truly is, a defense against their own fragility, we gain insight not only into their psyche, but into our own. This understanding empowers us to step out of the cycle of validation seeking, embrace our flaws, and stand firm in our own sense of self-worth. To truly understand the depth of a narcissist's reaction to a sentence like, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," we must grasp the fundamental way in which the narcissist operates within relationships. Narcissists are not just engaging in social interactions as you or I might. They are performing an elaborate dance where every step is calculated to uphold their image, maintain their sense of superiority, and preserve their sense of control. In this world of fragile egos, the narcissist seeks power through dominance. And this dominance is inextricably linked to how they are perceived by others. The moment this perception is threatened, they are immediately plunged into psychological chaos. But it's important to realize that this chaos isn't merely a byproduct of insecurity or pride. It's a fundamental part of how the narcissist has learned to survive. The narcissist's self-worth is entirely reliant on external validation. Validation they gather through admiration, envy, or even fear. These external affirmations are the lifeblood of their identity. Without them, they are left with an unbearable void, one that they can neither confront nor fill without a complete collapse of their constructed self. This is where the real power of language comes into play. The sentence, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," doesn't just express doubt. It creates a seismic shift in the emotional reality of the narcissist. For someone without the same psychological structure, this sentence might lead to a reflective conversation or an attempt to rebuild trust. But for the narcissist, such a statement is a direct threat to their sense of self. It's not just about losing trust in the moment, it's about the fear of being exposed, the fear of being seen for what they truly are, beneath the layers of charm, bravado, and manipulation. What makes this even more potent is that narcissists are master manipulators when it comes to controlling the narrative. They will manipulate situations, emotions, and even people to ensure that they are always placed in a position of power. This manipulation isn't typically malicious in the traditional sense. It is rather a deeply ingrained coping mechanism. The narcissist's need to control is driven by the anxiety they feel over their vulnerability. Without control, they feel helpless at the mercy of forces far beyond their influence. Now, when you challenge their trustworthiness, especially with a simple yet devastating sentence like, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," you are doing more than questioning their behavior. You are shaking the very foundation of their identity. You are forcing them to confront the terrifying possibility that their mastery over their own narrative is slipping. This is why the response to such a statement is so intense. The narcissist's entire psychological architecture is predicated on being in control. Control of the narrative, control of others' perceptions, and control of their own image. If you disrupt that control, they feel as though they are falling into an abyss, and they will react in whatever way they can to regain that sense of power. It's crucial to understand that when a narcissist is faced with the possibility of being doubted or exposed, they often don't know how to process this information in a healthy, constructive way. For most of us, being questioned is an opportunity for growth or reconciliation. We may pause, reflect, and work through our feelings. But for the narcissist, such questioning is a full-blown psychological crisis. In their world, to be questioned is to be diminished. To be doubted is to lose their place at the top of the hierarchy. It is, in their eyes, a form of rejection. A rejection they cannot afford to experience because it would signify the collapse of their entire self-concept. This crisis is often met with a variety of defensive strategies. Narcissists may respond with anger, dismissing your concerns as unimportant or misguided. They might retaliate, using words or actions to turn the tables, making you feel as though you are the one in the wrong. They might resort to guilt tripping, manipulating your emotions to get you to retract your statement. But all of this is ultimately designed to protect one thing: their fragile, constructed identity. The anger or hostility is not personal. It is a defense mechanism, an attempt to regain control and ensure that their narrative remains intact. For the narcissist, even a hint of vulnerability is tantamount to being exposed as weak, and weakness is something they cannot allow themselves to show. This need for control, coupled with their fear of being exposed, is what drives the narcissist's behavior. The paradox here is that while they seek to dominate others through their inflated sense of self, they are, at their core, deeply insecure. They cannot tolerate being seen as anything other than perfect. And the fear of being seen as less than perfect is the engine that fuels their responses to challenges. So when you say something like, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," the narcissist feels that their world is beginning to collapse. The careful balancing act they've constructed to protect themselves from the truth about themselves, about others, and about the world starts to falter. But there's another layer to this that's essential to consider: the narcissist's self-deception. Narcissists are skilled at maintaining their own delusions. They will often create elaborate justifications for their actions, spinning narratives that place them in the most favorable light. This isn't just a strategy for external manipulation. It's a defense against the reality that they are not perfect. Narcissists have a profound need to believe that they are flawless, because if they admit any imperfection, they fear the very fabric of their identity will disintegrate. When you introduce doubt into their world, you are doing more than just calling attention to their behavior. You are shattering the illusion they've worked so hard to build. This illusion is not just about how others see them, it's about how they see themselves. The narcissist has carefully constructed a self-emission that allows them to avoid facing their own vulnerabilities. But when you question their trustworthiness, you are forcing them to confront the reality that they may not be as invulnerable as they think. This confrontation is terrifying for them because it requires them to acknowledge their flaws, to confront their own humanity, and to embrace the possibility of imperfection. It's important to recognize that this is not a conscious choice for the narcissist. They are not maliciously trying to deceive others. They are simply trying to protect themselves from an unbearable reality. This is why the sentence, "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore," has such a profound effect on them. It forces them into a position where they must reckon with their own self-deception, and this reckoning is something they are unwilling and often unable to do. In the grand scheme of things, this reveals a powerful psychological truth. The narcissist's need for control and admiration is not a sign of strength, but of deep fragility. They are constantly at war with the fear that their constructed image will be exposed as false. And in that war, every threat, no matter how small, feels like an existential crisis. The response to that threat is panic, anger, and defensiveness because the alternative is too much for them to bear, the unraveling of their identity. So what do we do with this knowledge? How can we use it to guide our own interactions with narcissists? The first step is understanding the stakes for them. Their responses are not about us. They are about their own deep-rooted fear of exposure. With this understanding, we can approach interactions with greater clarity and perhaps greater compassion. We can set boundaries without expecting the narcissist to change, knowing that their reactions are driven by deep, ingrained psychological patterns, and we can resist being manipulated by their defensive tactics, maintaining our sense of self in the face of their desperate need to control the narrative. Ultimately, the lesson here is that narcissists are not merely difficult people. They are people trapped in a cycle of self-deception, constantly battling the fear of being exposed. Recognizing this allows us to navigate these relationships with greater awareness and perhaps even greater empathy, while also protecting our own psychological well-being. By understanding the fragility at the heart of their inflated self-emission, we reclaim our power in these interactions, not through manipulation, but through clarity, boundaries, and self-respect. The final key point we must explore is the power of walking away. "I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore" is not just a statement of doubt. It is, in many ways, a point of no return. The moment you express that sentiment, you are not simply questioning the narcissist's behavior, you are making a definitive statement about your boundaries and your expectations. And that, my friends, is when the true nature of the narcissist reaction begins to emerge. We have already established that narcissists are masters of control, and part of that control is maintaining dominance in relationships. They thrive on keeping the upper hand, on manipulating situations to ensure they are the ones in power, the ones who dictate the terms of engagement. But there is a critical truth about narcissism that many people miss. Narcissists cannot tolerate losing control. not just because of the emotional discomfort it causes them, but because it poses a threat to their very existence. For them, losing control is not merely about the discomfort of being undermined or exposed. It is about the unraveling of their self-emission. It is about the collapse of everything they have built to protect themselves from the crushing sense of inadequacy that lurks beneath the surface. So when you say, I'm not sure if I can trust you anymore, you are initiating a chain reaction. You are not just expressing doubt, you are challenging their power in a fundamental way. But what truly intensifies the narcissist reaction is when you follow through with the power of walking away. When you make it clear that the trust has been broken beyond repair and you detach, the narcissist's world tilts. You've taken away their most cherished resource, your validation. In that moment, they no longer have the ability to control the narrative. You have made a decisive, irrevocable statement that cannot be ignored, and this is the point at which their panic reaches its peak. Narcissists thrive on the admiration, the attention, the validation that they extract from others. Their entire sense of self is propped up by this external affirmation. It is as though they are walking on a foundation made entirely of others' perceptions. When that foundation is threatened, when you express your inability to trust them, it triggers an immediate sense of vulnerability. But when you actually follow through and leave, when you walk away emotionally, psychologically, or even physically, you do something much more devastating. You deprive them of their most vital source of validation. You are not just challenging their trustworthiness, you are taking away their ability to manipulate the situation any further. For a narcissist, this is one of the most terrifying possibilities. They are accustomed to being able to manipulate people into staying in their orbit. They use charm, coercion, guilt, and fear to keep others tethered to them. But when you walk away, you do not just escape the narcissist's grip. You disrupt the very structure of their world. Without the constant validation from others, the narcissist is left facing the terrifying possibility of their own emptiness. They are suddenly forced to confront the reality that their identity is fragile, that it is not as impervious as they believed. The narcissist's reaction to being abandoned is often disproportionate to the situation itself. They may attempt to reassert control by escalating their manipulation tactics. They may bombard you with promises of change, apologies that come too late, or even feigned indifference in an attempt to provoke a reaction. But none of this is truly about you. It is about them desperately trying to hold on to the illusion of control. They cannot fathom being left behind, and they will do anything to regain their position in the dynamic. But walking away, especially if you remain firm in your decision, is powerful because it communicates something the narcissist cannot easily ignore. It sends a message that they are no longer the center of your world, that their ability to manipulate your emotions and perceptions is over. And this is where the real danger lies for them. Narcissists, at their core, are profoundly insecure. They build grandiose identities to protect themselves from the terror of feeling worthless, of feeling like they are nothing. But when someone walks away from them, they are forced to confront that reality, that they are not as powerful or as important as they once believed. In essence, you become a mirror that reflects the very thing they cannot bear to see, their own weakness. The narcissist's panic in response to being walked away from is not just about losing a source of validation, it is about the collapse of their carefully constructed identity. And this is a critical insight into the narcissist's psyche. They are constantly at war with their own fear of inadequacy. They fear being exposed as a fraud, as someone who is empty and lacking. When you remove yourself from their life, you are not just removing yourself emotionally, you are highlighting the emptiness that lies at the heart of their existence. You force them to confront the fact that they have built their world on sand, and with each relationship they manipulate, each person they exploit, they move further away from the possibility of true connection, true self-acceptance. In many ways, walking away is the most effective response because it removes the narcissist's ability to control the narrative. When you stay in the relationship, whether it is a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even a professional one, you are allowing the narcissist to manipulate and twist the situation to suit their needs. But when you walk away, you take away their power. You refuse to be part of the performance they are trying to stage. And that refusal is what drives them into panic. It forces them to confront the void they have been running from their entire lives. This moment of walking away is not just an escape. It is an act of self-respect and empowerment. It is a way of asserting your own boundaries, your own autonomy, and your own worth. It is a recognition that your peace of mind and emotional well-being are far more valuable than the temporary validation a narcissist can provide. And while it might feel painful or even difficult, in the short term, it is a necessary step in reclaiming your life and your sense of self. You are not allowing yourself to be manipulated any longer. You are, in essence, taking control of your own narrative. This leads to a larger, deeply philosophical point. The ability to walk away, whether from a narcissist, a toxic relationship, or any situation that diminishes you, is not simply a practical decision. It is a moral one. It is a statement that you will not participate in a system that seeks to diminish your value, to exploit your vulnerabilities, or to manipulate your perceptions. By walking away, you are reaffirming your own dignity. You are saying, I am worthy of being treated with respect. I am worthy of honesty. I am worthy of genuine connection. This act of walking away is an assertion of your own sovereignty, a declaration that you will not sacrifice your integrity for the sake of someone else's illusion of superiority. In conclusion, the narcissist's panic in response to being doubted, questioned, or abandoned is not simply a knee-jerk emotional reaction. It is a reflection of their profound insecurity, their desperate need to control their environment, and their inability to confront their own vulnerabilities. And while it might be tempting to engage with the narcissist in an attempt to regain control, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. By doing so, you not only protect your own psychological and emotional well-being, but you also send a message that you will no longer tolerate manipulation. Walking away is not just a form of self-preservation. It is a declaration of your own worth. And in that declaration, you reclaim your power,